Hello and welcome. You are watching a live episode, our fourth episode of That Christian Panel, which may stay the name if we don't think of a better one. Um, please welcome. My name is Keri Smith. I'm the host of the Deprogrammed podcast, but we are multi-streaming tonight on several channels. So I'm going to just let everyone introduce themselves. Brahma.
Oh,
Okay. I'm Brahma Bull. We'll be simulcasting to my channel along with this. We're just trying to get the show out as far-reaching as we possibly can, just because, we think these are important talks to have. So glad everybody's here tonight, and it should be a fun, interesting discussion again. So thanks for having me.
Thanks for having me.
yes, and I'm Michelle. Good to be here. I'm excited to chat about Lewis. I've been a big fan of Narnia since I was a kid, so it's a very excellent literature piece.
And I'm Odin. I'm terrible at introductions for myself. So I'm also very excited. Big fan of C.S. Lewis. I'm also excited because we're kind of going with a theme for maybe a couple of episodes, kind of continuing on the discussion about C.S. Lewis. So it's fun to be, kind of starting off with what most people, I think, know him for, which is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Yes. True. So we started with The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe because, as you said, Odin, when I was looking up some stuff about this topic, I saw out of all of his books, that's the one that is most available, across the world and in libraries and schools. And it's the one that most people know. And there are several film or series adaptations. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Disney movie from 2005, the live action Disney movie. And then Brahma and Odin watched a little bit of the animated version, but it wasn't the one you thought it was. Is that right, Odin?
It wasn't. I pretty much am convinced that either there's some conspiracy that there at one time was another animated version of the film that has since ceased to exist, or otherwise as a pure Mandela effect. And I remember watching some animated version that doesn't actually exist, because the version that I watched, the 79 version on YouTube, is nothing like I remember it.
Is it, are you the type when you were younger? Because I read this book, but it's been a long time ago. I haven't read this one as an adult. It was in childhood. Were you the kind of kid when you read a book, you were envisioning everything in your head, and so sometimes you can't remember if you saw a movie of that or not?
It could be, but I doubt it, just because I've never been a good reader. I always loved being read to. And so I grew up with my dad reading Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and books like that. And so I think I was able to kind of help visualize, because that was before any of the movies had come out. But for this one, I honestly just don't know, because it just drives me crazy, because in my head there's a vision that I have of what the Queen looks like, and what the specifically the scene with the Turkish delight. Like, and in my head I was like, okay, this is how it looks. And then when I saw this animated version that's apparently the only one that exists, I was like, nope, that's not what I remember.
Might it have been the artwork from the books?
Maybe that's it. That could be it. Maybe I read it when I was a kid, and it was a version that had a lot of pictures. That would make more sense, I think, to me.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, Odin, because I was not a reader as a kid either. Like that was a skill, a habit I did not really get into until I got older. I would say until I really was in college. And so I never actually, in fact, even that now I'm like, I wouldn't read it. I'd get the audiobook of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. But I feel like I should at some point, because it is such a fascinating tale, and just there's just so much magic to what C.S. Lewis wrote, really.
I will say, I'll take this moment to say then, since you mentioned the audiobook and Odin was saying, we're going to explore some more C.S. Lewis. We are going to be discussing the Screw Tape Letters, and I'll just tell everybody who's watching now, if you haven't read that yet, it's actually a pretty quick read. But if you want to listen to the audiobook, John Cleese does an excellent version of the audiobook, and he just comes off as a demon so wonderfully. So I would highly recommend that version if you listen to it before we get to that.
I think that's what I'm going to do. I actually have the book, but you'd recommended that, so I'll probably listen to that.
Yeah, it's good. Okay, so I'm going to play the I'm going to play the trailer for the 2005 Disney version. I don't know why I didn't think of playing the trailer for the previous films we talked about, but if we can do it without getting blocked, why not? Let's add it here so people can see. This is the movie we're going to be talking about.
Be nice, Disney.
Yeah, Disney has its faults, but they're usually generous with this stuff.
Impossible.
Take them. There is a prophecy that 2 sons of Adam and 2 daughters of Eve will appear to defeat the White Witch and put an end to this 100-year winter.
I think you've made a mistake. We're not heroes.
There's no mistake. Aslan is on the move.
Aslan, we need your help.
I know, but understand. The future of Narnia rests on your courage.
If it's a war Aslan wants, it's a war he shall get.
They come in numbers far greater than our own.
Numbers do not win a battle.
No, but I bet they help.
You're muted,
I'm muted.
Keri.
First thoughts about the trailer.
I mean, I actually really enjoyed this version of the Chronicles of Narnia. I saw it, I believe, twice in theaters when it came out. This was back in an era people have to realize with Disney when they had just done like Pirates of the Caribbean, and then you get the Chronicles of Narnia. I don't know. It was just it was a better day.
The trailer alone gives me chills. It's the kind of movie trailer I like, where actual goosebumps, like this is gonna be exciting. You know, there's the right crescendo and the battle of good and evil, and I'm a big fan of. I like the trailer.
My favorite
I
part
like it.
ultimately has to be when Aslan speaks and you're like, it's Mason.
It's Liam Neeson.
And they got such a great voice to do Aslan. I mean, my gosh, I can't think of a better voice
I
for
can think of
Aslan.
only one.
Yes.
Morgan Freeman.
Okay, Morgan Freeman. Okay, Morgan Freeman. He would be good
Sean
too.
Connery back in the day.
Oh,
Sean Connery. Wait, so that was Liam Neeson?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I can hear it now. Yes.
He's a lion with a particular set of skills.
So, I love the film. I had not seen it, or if I had seen it, I didn't remember it. And I watched it today, and I can't imagine Disney making something like that today. I think somebody in the chat said, "Would we ever see that today?" Because I know I read somewhere that C.S. Lewis said that at the time that any he wasn't trying to be heavy-handed with the Christian theme, but I do think the Christian theme is very obvious. So I don't know if they could do it exactly this way today. I think they would probably try and change it.
Well, we'll find out because
Yes.
Netflix is doing the adaptation, and isn't it Greta Gerwig? That is
It's Greta. It's Greta.
Of Barbie
So-
fame.
and she's someone where she's a disillusioned lapsed. I don't know if she herself is a lapsed Catholic, but I know that she like went to Catholic school, and so that's very much a big part of how she tells stories. It's like a big part of Lady Bird, for instance. But in all honesty, like the kind of person that she is, I would not be surprised if it was A Wrinkle in Time 2.0, where that film was done by Ava DuVernay and she stripped any sense of Christianity out of that movie. And I think that we'll probably see this. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't even mention daughter of Adam, daughter of Eve, because of just the biblical connection there.
If you strip this movie, I mean, Wrinkle in Time was awful, but if you strip this movie of its Christian theme, or this book of its Christian themes, like, you don't really have a book. Because I mean, it is that heavy-handed. I mean, at the end of the day.
Well, and that's when the book was it took him 10 years to write the book. And he actually, about 7 years into it, completely trashed it and started again. But the problem he was having was he couldn't figure out how to tie everything together. And that's when he thought of Aslan and put that in.
The
and
sacrifice.
That tied the whole story together. And it became the allegory.
So for anyone who hasn't seen it, I guess the short synopsis, it's these 4 children, their dad's in the war. They get sent during an evacuation to go to the countryside and stay with this professor, this eccentric professor, and his housekeeper. And they discover in the wardrobe this other world called Narnia. And
that has to kind of open up to you. Because like you can't like you can't force into Narnia. Like it only opens up at times to certain people.
Yes. And the first one that it opens up to is the youngest, a little girl named Lucy. And so the first time anyone goes through the wardrobe, it's her, and she stumbles into this permanently like winter wonderland, and she meets this faun who's this guy named Mr. Tomlin. Is that right? That's right. That's his name. Tomness.
Tomlin.
Mr. Tomlin.
First name Lily.
Mr. Tomness.
Can I pause, or do you want to tell this then, and then we'll go back and talk?
You go ahead.
Because Chris already said it, because I rewatched it last night, and it put a smile on my face, the fact that he has Lucy be the one to discover it, because it is such a tie-in to this. Unless you have the faith of a child, like, you will not enter into the kingdom of God, like the kingdom of heaven. The fact that it is Lucy, because Lucy so represents like such innocence.
Yeah.
And in fact, no one believes her when she comes back.
I'll take you a step further deep into this one, because her name is Lucy, which comes from the word Lucia, which is light. And if you think about it, right, not only is she the light that guides everyone else to Narnia, but also who's the first person she meets? Someone who is intended upon, turning her over to the queen. But what does she do? Her genuine kindness, her childlike innocence, her light is what helps to basically bring about this conversion of heart of Mr. Tumnus. And so I think there's also that beautiful imagery within that too.
Yes. That makes me think of somewhere closer to the end of the movie, maybe 3/4 of the way through, where she's playing with her older sister, and her older sister says, "I'm sorry, we haven't had as much fun as we used to." And she said, "Well, we used to back before you got boring." And then her older sister starts playing with her, horsing around. And it made me think of a recent sermon. My pastor was talking about restoring that childlike wonder with all of God's creation, that joy that we so often lose when we become cynical adults and, forget to take all that's beautiful about the world, start to take it for granted.
Yeah. And Lewis does a great job. Lewis captures childlike innocence very, very well. And, one of the versions that I was able to kind of listen to a bit was the audiobook from Audible that is done by Michael York. For anyone that doesn't know Michael York, he's been in a ton of stuff. I've always known him as Basil Exposition from the Austin Powers films myself. But he's got a great voice, and he just reading the words, playing the characters, it just adds that level of, man, they just get kids, right? The relationship between Edmund and Lucy and how he wants to be just mean and nasty, and just that entire dynamic, and the older brother acting a certain way, the older sister acting a certain way. He does a great job capturing all of that.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned the Susan and Lucy scene, because that one hits a lot harder for people who have gone all the way through the series. I'm not going to spoil anything, but that does come back into play later. Susan's attitude.
Oh, well. I just wanted to show a funny comment in the chat. I think all of the comments will show up here no matter where you're watching the show tonight. Boosh McFadden says, she's also like that street light that shines in the window at the hotel and you can't sleep because it's too annoying. Hey! Boosh!
How dare you?
And there was another funny one. Lil Chad says, in the Greta Gerwig remake, Aslan will be Ken.
Seems likely.
No, Aslan will be Dr. Barbie.
No.
But it does, again, like Lucy, something, I know I gave things that I prayed about last time, something that I literally at times pray, like when I'm praying, is like I will ask the Lord, like, Lord, help me keep growing in grace and in the knowledge of the Lord Jesus Christ. May I keep growing and growing in wisdom and understanding, while at the same time, may I hold on to that childlike faith. May I never lose that. That faith that just believes because it's written. As a child believes just because their parent told them so. So it's like that is the thing as a Christian. You're always supposed to be maturing, growing, but you can't lose that child wonder.
Right.
Yes. I come back. I'm gonna just interject one little anecdote here, not about the movie, but you're making me think of this. Again, about the way we've just become, as adults, I think the temptation as humans is just to take everything for granted in God's creation. And there was a sermon my pastor gave once about how we all live like kings today compared to how humans have lived for all of human history and all over the globe. That in the Western world, I mean, we live the way royalty used to live. Or even better, we have running water, we have heat, all these things we take for granted. And he said something, no, I don't think he mentioned oranges. I was reading something about oranges at the same time, how in Renaissance art, when they would do portraits, sometimes they would paint oranges in the portraits to show how wealthy the people were because they could afford oranges. And so it just made me think about oranges so differently, where if I have one, I'm like, I've got to take a second and appreciate this orange, because I'm just like oranges, schmoranges, can get whatever I want at the grocery store,
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's even that scene, at least in the 93 version of Little Women, where the youngest one, what's her name? I forget it. In that one, it's played by Kirsten Dunst, but like she has an orange at Christmas and she's so
excited, right?
Yeah, because it was that way. So definitely.
Well, so in the synopsis of the story, so Lucy's the first one who discovers Narnia, or Narnia reveals itself to her, and she meets this faun named Mr. Tomness. Tumness. And I would have to say, in the movie version, I forgot kind of some of the finer points of this story, and so. At first, when he's talking to her and he's like, "Oh, come back to my place for tea," and I'm like, "No, why are you going with this creepy guy?" And I was wondering if anybody else got that vibe from him at first. I was happy to find out that my gut wasn't wrong, because then you find out he did intend to do her harm at first. But
yeah, the cartoon. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think it does show how jaded we've all become, because watching this in 2005, my brain did not go there as, what was I, 16 years old. Now my brain was like, this
stranger danger.
Yeah, like this could go really wrong.
Yeah.
Did you notice who plays Mr. Tumnus, Keri?
Yes.
Mm-mm.
James McAvoy.
Who
Professor
is that?
X from the X-Men First Class.
Okay, I knew he looked familiar.
Yeah,
tons of other stuff.
Lots of stuff, but that was one of the first roles I think I saw him in.
Yeah, it was interesting because in the cartoon version, I think they're a little bit more kind of on point with it, because as I said, I was being able to listen to the audiobook while also trying to watch it. That's why I was only able to get like halfway through the movie, but then able to get through the first like 3 or 4 chapters of the book. What's interesting is in the book, it talks about how Mr. Tumnus is red in complexion, but it's not specified as being like actually like red skin, whereas like the queen is described as actually having white skin, like actually like the color white and not just a fair skin. So I found it interesting in the cartoon they just make him completely red.
Right. Yeah,
he looks
he's
like a little devil
demon
basically.
red. Yeah.
Even creepier, right?
Yeah, they didn't shy away from that at all in the cartoon.
Yeah, even like when she went back to his place and he made her some tea and then he starts creepily playing his flute. I'm like, no. And I was like you, Michelle, I was thinking, is it the modern culture that's made me so jaded? This is probably innocent. It's probably, and then you find out no. So he tells her that the evil queen, the White Witch, he's supposed to turn in any son or daughter of Adam and Eve. And because she's a human, he's supposed to turn her in. And like you said, Odin, he can't, her innocence or childlike innocence prevents him from doing so. So she goes back, tells her brother and sister, she goes back through the wardrobe. They don't believe her brothers and sister. And the second time she goes through, her brother Edmund follows her. And he's not the oldest son. He's the second oldest son. I would say, how would you guys describe his character?
Well, I mean, he's the one who messes up all the time.
He's kind of a snotty jerk.
Yeah.
He's the malicious brother that is mean because he wants to be mean and not for really any other reason.
And because he feels so less than his two older siblings, and he wants to be like on their level, but he's not. I did have to laugh. Did it make you laugh? Did either of you gentlemen watch the Disney version in preparation? Okay.
Yeah.
It made me. I laugh when he goes through and he goes, "Okay, Lucy, I think I believe you now," or like, you think like you're literally in a new land with snow.
He's a child version of Cain in the Cain and Abel story. He's a child's version of resentment towards his older siblings, and he meets the queen, he meets the darkness, the White Witch, and when she offers him anything he wants, and he asks for Turkish delight, these little candies. And in the movie, the 2005 version anyway, it's so gross the way he was like greedily eating these. Even the sound of him eating them, I'm like, I don't want to see this. It was like this like shameful overindulgence.
She has like some sarcastic line as she wipes his face that's like smothered in Turkish delight. I do think that actress, I forget her name,
Tilda Swinton.
I thought she did a fantastic job. Like she nailed the role. I think.
Well, she's just brilliant in general. Like she's one of the best character actresses that's ever existed.
And much better than the cartoon version. The voice of the witch in the cartoon version.
It's annoying.
After about 20 seconds, it's like, no, I don't want to watch this anymore.
Now I need to go listen. Is it high pitch? What is it?
It's just constant screaming. It's way overacted.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It's bad. It's on YouTube, free.
Yeah, I'll have to actually watch it. I do appreciate, I mean, obviously, even again, the genius of the symbolism of the White Witch. Of course, Satan disguising himself as an angel of light.
Oh, yeah.
And just how, like, she first is going to give him everything he wants, just to get him hooked. And then
he's going to be the king, and his older brother will be his servant.
Yes. Yeah, she gave him everything he wanted and appeased to those desires that were wrong in his own heart.
And it didn't cost that much to buy him, just like Judas.
Yes.
30 pieces of Turkish delight.
Exactly.
That's it.
What is has anyone eaten Turkish delight?
I've never had it. It just sounds disgusting to me.
I think it
definitely looked disgusting.
It's just something. Either it's a pastry or a candy with a cream-filled center, I believe.
Okay.
Never actually seen it in real person and never eaten it. So
I remember even when I was younger, in the fake version of the movie that's in my head, that it just didn't look very appetizing. I was just like, what? This is what you're going with? You're going to betray your entire family because of this? Okay.
Circus peanuts. Give me the worst candy. Okay, so then does anybody want to pick up with what happens after this, or you want me to keep going?
Yes. So, well, I mean, you can keep going. Or yeah.
You go ahead for a little bit.
Okay.
want.
So then I'm going off memory now. So then they they both Lucy and Edmund go back into the real world, and they're playing a game of hide and seek. And no, they're outside. What game is that they're playing? Cricket.
They were playing cricket.
Cricket. And Edmund puts a hole in the window, and they're all hiding from the what would you call her? The woman that's in charge?
The caretaker, housekeeper.
From the caretaker. So they run into the wardrobe, and they all enter into Narnia. So then all four of them are into Narnia. They eventually run into a beaver who talks. And he takes them back to his house, at which point they realize they've lost Edmund, who is on his way to go take the White Witch up on her offer.
Yeah. And they find out that
Tumnus has been taken
yes.
by the witch, or by the secret police.
There was part of
that doesn't discourage Edmund. He's just like, oh, he must be bad. He just keeps going.
In the cartoon, it's funny because the way they animate him, he's just so uninterested. So the animation, he's just like rolling his eyes, and he's just like, I really want my Turkish delight. What the heck are we doing here?
He's terrible at first. Yeah, he's terrible. It's like that. You know, I think it's so. It bothers me so much because you can see so much of yourself in it. All the worst parts of human nature in a character like that, where they're just putting it on display, you know. Then he in that scene, when they find Mr. Tumnus's house has been ransacked, and there's a note that says he was taken basically for fraternizing with Lucy, for talking to a human, and now he's in a prison camp or something, and Edmund's just like, well, who cares? He's a criminal. Like, it made me think of all the people in the country in the past few years who just had no empathy for people who were losing their jobs, or because of government policies, and you know, a lot of the stuff around
that's their fault. It's not my fault. It's not my fault.
They should just listen to whatever they're told.
Yeah,
they're criminals. They're unclean. So you're right. So then the beavers basically say, we're going to take you to Aslan. And
first, I think they have to get them safe, just because I think Narnia at that point is kind of a dangerous place, because you've got even the trees will tell on you to the White Witch. And then it's where the beavers finally tell them the prophecy that a son of Adam and a daughter of Eve will basically squash the White Witch and dethrone her, and this frozen. What were we saying?
Two sons of Adam and two daughters of Eve.
They sit on the throne.
Of Eve.
That's why it's important that there's the four of them.
Yes, and that they will basically end her tyranny over Narnia.
So they battle. They battle some wolves. There's a cute little fox that helps them out.
Love the fox.
I love the fox, right? And what's the next? Oh, there is a scene where you see Edmund with the queen, with the wicked witch, basically. And he's like sitting when he first walks into her castle, he doesn't see her at first, and he sits in her throne. I thought that was also really well done, because you can see that just delight on it, you know, that ego of imagining himself there as king. And she becomes angry at him, of course, because he didn't bring his siblings. And so they launch I think I'm skipping ahead if I say there's a war that happens, but I'm trying to think if there's anything else that's important before the war.
Yes. Well, and too, when the kids are with the beavers, they realize Edmund has already gone to the queen.
He sneaks away.
Yeah, he snuck away, and then the rest of them are just having to escape to find Aslan, who we're told is on the move and preparing an army.
Right. So when they meet Aslan, he is...
Go back a little bit.
Wait, back a little bit?
Yeah.
About the ice falling and them running from the...
about... So the thing in Narnia is it's always winter, but it's never Christmas.
Okay.
So while they're fleeing... You have kind of like a Lord of the Rings scene with the riders coming after them, and they're hiding, and they come back out, or well, they send Mr. Beaver out, and Mr. Beaver goes to see who is actually on the sleigh, and that's when Santa is reintroduced to Narnia, which I always likened Santa in this story, because of the allegory stuff, as basically the three wise men and the angels
Oh.
when Jesus is being announced at his birth. So it's kind of like Santa reappears, and you know that's a sign that Aslan's coming back.
I've never thought of it that way, but that's really good.
He brings gifts like the Magi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So it's
so
not, I mean, it
interesting,
is
yeah.
Santa, but I think it is also an allegory. Plus, it's the end of winter, and people are excited. Well, all the animals are excited. So
You can also connect it to the fact with Santa, right? Is Saint Nicholas. So it's again
Yes.
the saints are returning, and so it's almost in a way you could think about even deeper as the prophecy in the Lord of the Rings, where it's when the birds start to return to the mountain, that's the sign of things coming. In this instance, it's the fact that you have Santa, that Christmas is returning, and that again that sanctity is also returning too, slowly and surely. So I think that's there's a lot of that imagery that I really hope Netflix does not get their hands on it to be able to take away any of that stuff.
It won't be Saint Nick in the woods. It'll be Sam Smith dancing.
Oh, gosh.
It'll be something just
Oh,
what's the
gosh.
most upside down thing it could be?
It's the multicultural Santa. So he celebrates Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, and Christmas all at the same time.
Right.
yeah.
Well, I think it's safe to say in the new version, the 4 characters will not be white. Like, there's no way.
They'll all be adopted.
None of them are actually like, yes, blood related. They're all just adopted in different places around the world.
Oh, hey, Tracy. Tracy from Keto and Crime is here for $20. Thank you so much, lady. If you guys don't know Keto and Crime, it's a great true crime channel. And Tracy, thank you for the super chat. Says Father Christmas tells them that the witch is a descendant of Adam and Lilith, not Adam and Eve. She only pretends to be human. Like a lot of politicians. Thank you very much. So now I'll be honest, my dog was watching this with me and I was falling asleep when they were escaping with the ice falling. My dog always makes me have, like, if he's napping, I usually have a little nap. So they do escape. The kids almost die. They're in the freezing water, and
because it's melting. It's melting.
because it's all melting.
Because winter's coming to an end.
Winter's ending.
Summer's
right.
coming.
Or at least spring.
Yeah.
And is the next important part, because the next important part for me was when they met Aslan. Is that okay to
Yes.
jump down? Okay.
Yeah,
So
it's getting there.
what do you think about him being a lion?
Well, I mean, I just love it. I mean, again, I didn't know that Lewis had said that it wasn't heavy-handed, because it's very heavy-handed. I mean, the lion of the tribe of Judah. I mean, I think this one is pretty on the nose.
And to be also the lion, right, is the king of the jungle. So for him to be, king of kings, there's a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah, it made sense with the animals being, the people of Narnia. And it made sense as the allegory.
I love it because he's so fierce, but also loving, gentle, both. And I think that's hard. That's a hard concept to grasp when you're new to Christianity and you're thinking about the God who judges is also the God who loves. And I think a lion is a great representation of that. There was a quote towards the end where I think it's Lucy. No, it's Lucy and Mr. Tomness. Mr. Tomness says he's not tame. He's not a tame lion. And Lucy says, but he is good.
Mm.
And
Well, and in the cartoons, the kids say, they're talking with Mr. Beaver, and they're like, yeah, should we be afraid to meet the lion? And they're like, oh, yeah. And he's a lion. He's the king of all the beasts, but he's a fair lion and a good lion.
What does that mean to you guys about fearing, being afraid to meet the lion, like fearing God? Because the Bible talks about fearing God. And I think sometimes when I hear, especially when I hear with all the cultural wars happening today, and if I watch clips of, contentious school board meetings where parents are arguing about different policies, and when I hear sometimes woke parents or people who are in that belief system say things sort of as a gotcha to Christians and say things like, you're supposed to love. Basically, they talk about loving God and God loving people, but they almost forget entirely about fearing God.
It's the obsession with what's known as, I mentioned this to my students, like, yeah, there's a lot of people that will give you this image of a hippie Jesus, right? Where it's like peace and love, peace and love. And it's like, yes, but there's also, be perfect as my heavenly Father is perfect. Right now we're reading through the Gospel of Matthew, and we just started today the Sermon on the Mount, and there are several mentions of Gehenna, of hellfire, right? Depending on the translation. I actually like Gehenna because the historical place of Gehenna is where trash was constantly burning. So he's basically saying, yeah, if you fall away from what you're called to be, you're no better than trash burning. It's like,
Wow.
that's a
Yeah.
very very vivid image. And yet so many people just gloss over those, right? Gloss over, they like to say, well, what did he say to the woman in sin, right? Has no one condemned you? Neither do I. Go. Oh, and don't sin again. Like, people often just forget those things that are there, that are clearly saying conversion, right? Call metanoia, this conversion of heart, this change of heart and mind. But the thing and the way you do that is by actually changing, by actually turning away from that sin.
Yeah, and a healthy fear of God is a good thing, because
Yes.
I mean that's also your conscience. That's the Holy Spirit in you telling you, you're not doing things quite right. And I mean, God is as wrathful as he is loving. And Jesus was the same. I mean, look at the story of the money changers in the temple. He wasn't turning the other cheek. He was wrathfully angry. And I mean, that's the picture that some people, I mean, you were talking about the hippie Jesus. That's the picture that some people like to forget, is that Jesus was cracking whips and flipping over tables too. He wasn't just going
Righteous
around being
anger.
nice to everybody. Yeah.
Well, and that's where kind of a misconception that people get, because we get misconceptions of God that we develop in our brain. One that people get about Jesus in particular is they'll say he's meek and mild. And while Jesus is very meek, Jesus is the definition of meek. He was not mild. Because as you just said, he went in and turned over the tables out of his righteous anger. That's not a mild thing to do. Like, you get what I'm saying? There's a difference there. Like, and I think even again, going back to Aslan, what a perfect description of he's this bold lion that can provoke fear, because it's a lion that, I mean, could eat you. But then he's so loving and gentle that you could go up and just hug on the lion. And I mean, that really is just such a beautiful picture of God, because I mean, I think of the scripture too, where Jesus says, basically, don't be afraid of those who, after they kill you, can do nothing else to you. Fear God, who after you're dead can throw you into hell. And, as Chris has already put in there, Proverbs says that fear is the beginning of wisdom. And really just that place, I mean, I the way I take that scripture to mean is every person, by the grace of God coming to them, has to come to a place of realizing, like, something's wrong. Like, I've sinned. Something's not right. And it creates a sense of like a fear, like a healthy fear of like, how do I fix this? And that is kind of that beginning. Fear is the beginning of wisdom. It leads you kind of to God, because I mean, God is the answer for that fear.
Yeah, it reminds me of that verse, do not think that I have come to bring peace, but the sword. And that imagery there. And it kind of also reminds me, talking about this fear of God, is it's also this recognition of fatherhood, right? The fatherhood of God, because that is typically in most relationships. Obviously, there's always exceptions, but in most family relationships, you fear your dad, you fear your parents, but it's not I'm afraid. It's
Reverence.
I messed up.
Yes.
And I have consequences. And so that's the kind of fear it is. It's as you mentioned, it's a healthy fear, right? It's the
Yes.
kind of fear that we should be having towards our parents. And when it comes to our relationship with God, we're talking about our ultimate Father, right? And so being able to have that reverence, that respect, and to recognize, and I think like Aslan's, of course, that perfect example of that, of God is like that lion where we have to be afraid because if we mess up, our head gets bitten off. But at the same time, there is that goodness, that justice, that fairness that we can also trust in.
Well, and two, it's why, like, I don't know about you guys, at times when you don't necessarily know what the Book of Revelation is talking about, one of the things that I always get though out of reading it is every time I read the Book of Revelation, more so than any other book in the Bible, I feel this sense of reverence and awe. Like all of a sudden you feel, because it's the only book written from heaven's perspective. So you begin to get this sense of like, again, like a reverence, like a godly fear of like real, you're like, oh wow, like because you're taken to heaven, like, and you just begin to sense again that healthy fear that you have of just how small you are compared to God.
That God is so infinite, and we are not the star of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it feels like it at times.
And we try to make ourselves.
But
the
what's
star.
so awesome
Yeah.
is like in the story of Narnia, he has called everyone to participate in the prophecy as this is. The daughters, I mean the sons of Adam's and the daughters of Eve. We've all been called to participate in what is going on and happening.
In God's story.
And we all get to participate in this big story that God has put forth.
And make your choices.
Yes.
Evan made a choice.
Yep. Free will. We're talking about that. Sorry, I always have to
Do
bring
it.
my classes in because it's just in my mind. But it's our intellect, made in God's image and likeness. We have intellect and will. And it's only when our intellect and will are in union with not only one another, but also with God's will, that we're on the right track. If there's ever discord within us or discord between us and God, that's when problems usually come about.
Definitely. And I will have to say, speaking of this movie, Keri, because you gentlemen probably weren't this way. I will be honest that when Aslan came on screen, a tear might have come to my eye. Like it provokes that. Like
Yes.
it did. There's just like it's him. Like they did such a good job of like creating this sense of divinity.
You two keep trying to hope that me and Odin are going to cry in these movies.
One of these days, you two will cry.
If you make us watch anything, and it's one of those sad things where it's you cry at this, but not at that. If it's anything with animals, there's a higher chance that I will cry.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you ever make me watch Marley and Me again, oh goodness, I will.
What about Mac and me? No kidding. Yes, I got emotional in this movie. So especially when Edmund basically escapes and the queen comes to get him, and she says, the evil queen, she says there to Aslan and in front of all the animals and everyone that, in the according to the rules, she gets to keep Edmund and kill him. He will die on the rock because he was a traitor, because of his treachery, basically, that he's hers.
Which got us the best line in the movie. Liam Neeson going, "Don't quote the old magic at me, woman. I was there when it was made."
Yes.
Actually,
Something to
Tracy
that
just
effect.
sent that in. Yeah, she said, my favorite Aslan line. Thank you, Tracy. I was in the room when the deep magic was written, i.e., Christ was always. Yeah.
Yes. I love that line too. It's a great moment.
Yeah, before what is it? The line from Christ, before X, I am, right?
I
When he's
am.
talking to when he's being accused, and he is essentially at that moment revealing his identity to the committee with the mention of Yahweh, right? I am. Before all other things existed, I am.
Yes.
So she wants to take Edmund. She says she's owed Edmund. And Aslan basically, it's an allegory for Christ's sacrifice. Aslan exchanges himself for the boy and allows her to take his life. And they have a scene where he's on the rock, he's tied up on the rock, and she and all of her her evil creatures.
Oh, let's go back before that, Keri.
Okay. Yeah.
I like, again, allegorical. It's the two women that are with him the whole time.
Right.
And the
I
two
thought
women that are with him when he arises.
Right. Like in the Bible.
Yes, the women were right at his feet.
So there's also where they're mocking him, and they ask him what if he would like some milk or something. I can't remember what they offer him something. They're sort of mocking him, which in the Bible, of course, they offered Jesus this, was it spoiled wine on a sponge or something?
Vinegar.
Vinegar. Yeah. So yeah, I get emotional with Aslan. I get emotional. That scene was emotional.
Well, that whole scene, I mean, and in the Disney I remember liking that scene in the other version. I guess I used to watch the BBC version before the Disney one. I think the Disney one actually did such an amazing job of hitting the emotional beats. You so feel for Aslan, like as he's being mocked and degraded, and they shave him. I mean, to a lion, there's nothing worse than being shaved. They take away like his dignity, basically, fully.
Strip him of his garments.
Yes, exactly.
Well, in the allegory of Christ, if you're doing it for little kids to see, you can't have him beaten to a pulp like Christ was. So they did what they could and humiliate him.
Yes. Yeah, as the women just like watch from afar. Like, yeah, they do that scene so well, I think.
And the cartoon does it pretty much the same. The
Okay.
cartoon, both movie and cartoon, are really beat for beat. They take the story and they hit all the main points in the story. The cartoon's just a little bit more annoying. I remember it being a little bit more fun when I was a kid, but yeah, it is super annoying.
I'm convinced there's something else out there. I really just can't see it.
Maybe it's the Turkish version.
Well, yeah, it could be that we're watching the American dub for it, Odin.
But I just remember the animation being different too. Like that's like
the animation to me wasn't off. I remember Lucy, I remember the White Witch, and I remember the stupid little troll guy that does her sleigh. I remember all of them quite vividly from youth.
Odin, did you watch the BBC version?
So that's why I'm kind of wondering if maybe I saw several versions and I've just mixed them in my head. But it's one I'm interested in because I've read a lot of really good things about that one. And what was interesting was so at one point, this is what happens when your brain has ADD. So I was basically at one point, instead of actually sitting down and watching the whole thing, I was like, oh, I want to watch this part of this version to see how similar it is to the other two versions that I've also listened to partly. And it was interesting because the Michael York version of the audiobook with the same characterizations and tones very much matched what the BBC version did. And not so much what the cartoon version did. So I thought it was interesting that it seems that Michael York I don't know who would have influenced who time-wise, but it seems like they were on the same page as far as how these characters were being presented. I thought they were doing a great job with that.
I've got a quote here from La Familia Bazzani. I always say it wrong, I'm sure. It says, me too, the witch would be Satan, I think, the rebellious angel that wanted to be greater than Christ, Aslan, but can only try to compete. I wanted to highlight this one because it made me think of how in the Bible and in this story, everything that happens to Christ was known ahead of time.
Yes.
It was part of God's plan for salvation for God's children. The sacrifice was known. And so Christ went into that willingly. And there's something about that, about evil not understanding that. And I think there's even a line in this movie when Aslan comes back to life and he's talking to the girls and he says something about how the evil queen...
She knows the deep magic, but what she didn't remember was that if somebody who is innocent gives themselves willingly on behalf of somebody else, then that does not apply.
Yes, that she didn't understand what sacrifice was about.
Mhm.
Well,
And no, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say, well, and it so goes with, it's like, clearly if Satan would have known what Christ's sacrificial work was going to do, he would have like stopped it at any, like, he would have tried so hard to stop that from happening and would not have put it in people's hearts.
Well, and we brought that up in the first show that we did all together. Nefarious, the demon, actually brought that up and said, yeah, we thought it was our greatest moment of triumph, not our ultimate downfall.
Yeah, and I think I maybe had mentioned it during that stream too, but that reminds me of the moment from the Passion of the Christ, because they have it where after Christ's death and the earth is shaking and the temple is the temple is torn in two in the movie, whereas it's representative of the temple actually being destroyed, right, with the body of Christ. But what they immediately go to is Satan in this wasteland screaming and shrieking. And so it's that moment of like Satan has finally realized, I have lost.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's just so much beauty in that. And I think that, again, that's why this allegory that's being used throughout the very subtle, not heavy-handed allegory
it's pretty
is so
obvious.
powerful, right? To be existing in there.
Well, and on the allegory, the stone table, I mean, when Aslan is resurrected, the stone table cracks in half, which could be the temple. It could also be this gigantic, unmovable stone or very heavy stone in front of the grave rolling away. So, I mean, there's lots of things you can read into that whole scene.
There's so much symbolism in this movie.
Yeah. I would like to go back a couple scenes before this, though, when Edmund first comes back to the camp. Okay. So he goes and has a talk with Aslan one-on-one. And you don't know what's said there, but Aslan reunites him with the other kids and basically tells the kids, we've talked. There's nothing that you need to bring up with Edmund about what's happened. So it's forgiven and forgotten, even knowing that he's going to have to sacrifice himself for Edmund a few scenes later. So again, the forgiveness of Christ.
Well, and I mean, going back to that, I mean, when you look at it, I mean, Christ got down and washed Judas's feet. Like, before he's going to do what he does. I mean, just again, the total forgiveness that you have. And you also very much, because I don't want to compare him to Peter, but there is a little Peterness at that point with Edmund of course, I mean, he's more a Judas, let's be real. But I mean, obviously Peter fails the Lord pretty badly. And I believe it's in the Mark's version where he says, "Go tell my disciples and Peter of my return." He specifies Peter because he knows Peter is reeling from what he did.
Yeah.
Not as a slight.
Yeah, no, it wasn't a
And
slight,
Peter.
It was go get Peter. Like, I want Peter.
Yeah. Like special, making him special. Yes.
And I was going to say just a second ago when we were talking about how Satan wouldn't do it if he knew what it was. A scripture that I love so much is Colossians 2:15, that it says, when he, of course, Jesus, when he had disarmed the rulers and authorities, he made a public display of them, having triumphed over them in it. And I know in the Greek, like the imagery that is given there is how in Greek times, think of the old Roman Empire, when they conquered someone, even think of the movie Troy, and they would drag when they defeated someone in like a one-on-one battle, they would drag the person through the city, like basically humiliating them. And that is the word picture that is given for that scripture, that Jesus literally took Satan, who is such an egomaniac, by the way, and takes Satan and drags him like for all to see in the heavenlies, like as a defeated foe.
Thank you for highlighting that one. Okay.
So Aslan's resurrected.
Aslan is resurrected.
Spoiler warning, everybody. in case the Christ analogy was not clear enough, Mr. C.S. Lewis, spoiler warning.
At one point, he actually did say he didn't want it to be a direct allegory. He wanted it to be a reimagining of if you looked in on another world that was different from ours, how would the Christ story look?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's kind of a fantasy reimagining as well as the direct allegory.
It's interesting because I think you can see elements of this story in so many different stories in pop culture. I mean, this one is a little on the nose in some ways, but did I mention with you guys? Maybe it was on a different stream. Another, Odin, you mentioned your classes. I mentioned my pastor's sermons a lot because that's what's in my head. My pastor had given a sermon about, he was talking about the movie Titanic and how it was at the time, was it the biggest grossing movie ever? Like $1 billion, more than $1 billion. And he was sort of talking about the way that Jack sacrifices himself, this self-sacrifice for Rose, and the reason that strikes in the hearts of so many women who saw that movie and love that movie is because it reminds them of the self-sacrifice that our Creator had for us. I thought that's an interesting way of looking at that scene. But
it's very kind. It's a very generous way of looking at that. There was room on that door.
There was room on the door.
Odin, that James Cameron recently literally did a scientific experiment on could Jack survive?
Really?
I don't know if you know
Yes,
that.
he did.
Yeah, he did it.
Did he?
did
Could
it.
he?
And,
No.
okay, so if it was really arranged, maybe they both made it, but it definitely lessened her odds of making it. And James Cameron at the end just said, I just would have made the door smaller.
I'll never let go. 10 seconds later. See ya.
But she had to take his words and live. He told her to live.
Yeah. Yeah, Tracy's in the chat going, the door was big enough, bitter.
Do you know, I will say on that, without getting sidetracked, having gone down the absolute, I was obsessed with the Titanic when I was little, actually right before that movie came out. And after everything happened in the summer, I went down. I mean, I became like a part of the Titanic community, I would say. Like, I watched hours and hours of Titanic videos. I know every second of what happened that night at this point. But anyways, I actually do think that was the right call with that movie. And I never think that with a love story. I hate when someone dies in a love story. But I think it was the only way to honor the men, how many men literally did kiss their wife and children goodbye and never see them. I think it was the only way Cameron could honor those men was by Jack dying. You couldn't have both of them live in such a true, I mean, the Titanic situation was such a horrific event.
Yeah. Symbolic of the sacrifice, right? That they made.
Yeah. I agree.
So should we spoil the end of the movie?
Yeah, let's spoil it.
You spoiled everything
else.
Because
Aslan comes
Titanic?
back, you know, and
yeah.
It is an iceberg.
Yeah, everyone's seen Titanic and knows the story.
No, I meant The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So they have
we still got a little ways.
Yeah, they have the war, and Peter, the oldest brother, Aslan returns.
He goes and he goes to the witch's palace, and he revives everybody that she is frozen,
including Mr. Tumnus.
Yeah.
Yep.
Tumnus.
Tumnus.
Like Tums.
Tum.
Mr. T.
Mr. T.
Mr.
So he revives everybody else that had been frozen, and they join in the battle that has been going on while the girls were with Aslan. And that turns the tide in the battle along with everybody returning. Edward gets stabbed, and who is it? Lucy has the healing potion. It was one of the gifts from Santa. So she uses that to heal everybody on the field of battle. And there's a few other things that happen. You guys want to jump in?
the way you were, because I wasn't able to watch all of it, but I've seen it before. But one of the things that you were mentioning about Aslan going and freeing the people that have been frozen, it reminds me of I don't know if it's just in Catholic theology, so please let me know if this has been heard before, but there's a concept called the harrowing of hell. And it's the understanding that when Christ died, he just like in the creed, right?
Descended.
He descended into hell. And the concept is not that he descended into hell where those the souls of the of those who have rejected God, but rather it's the just souls of the Old Testament. And so it's him descending down to free those just souls. So the for historically and traditionally we understand it to be like Adam and Eve, Moses, right? All of the Old Testament prophets, all of the very important people that were again in this kind of limbo, as it were. In the bosom of Abraham is how it's referred to. But this harrowing of hell, it kind of reminds me, so he's breaking into literally hell, like her palace, her domain, and is reviving these people. And what do? They join the battle. So freeing these people to enter into heaven in this understanding that we have this harrowing of hell to do what? To enter back into that spiritual battle, because we understand church as a church triumphant of heaven, church militant of us fighting on earth, but also the church suffering of purgatory. And so we recognize all people battling and fighting and waging this war. So I think there's a lot of rich symbolism in there too.
Yeah. Thank you. I didn't.
Well,
didn't
and then
know
I
about
mean, and then even just the on the nose symbolism of literally him just breathing like
Yeah.
upon them.
Yeah, breathing life.
Yeah, it's the breath of life.
Yeah. Just from the movie standpoint and the cinematography and how they did the battle scene, the opening of the battle is pretty awesome. They've got the music going. They all start charging from both sides. The music goes dead silent. There's no sound in the movie at all until like a cheetah and a minotaur collide, and then suddenly the sound comes back. So that scene always stuck out to me as well done.
Yeah, I like
Since
it.
we're talking about the story and the actual media.
Yeah, no, it was. I mean, I enjoyed that entire movie, quite frankly. Again, I saw it twice in theaters.
I took my daughter, who is I think 5 years old at that time. She loved it. I liked it. She loved it. We watched it quite a few times. It was the best of the C.S. Lewis adaptations by Disney, because Prince Caspian was okay. Voyage of the Dawn Treader, they went downhill, and that's why we didn't see the rest of the series. But yeah, this one was pretty well done.
I was going to ask, because Tracy gave another super chat. Thank you, Keto and Crime, for $10. Says, jumping ahead, how's the panel view Prince Caspian and the Dawn Treader? I always took Caspian as a Paul Peter and the Dawn Treader as the original church. I can't answer that question.
Yeah, that's a good question. Like, I need to go back and watch that or listen to them. How many more books are there after Narnia, the Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe?
There's 7 total, if I remember right.
Okay. Yeah, I watched
Lion, the
Prince
Witch, and the
Caspian,
Wardrobe.
but it's
Prince
been a long
Caspian,
time.
Voyage of the Dawn Treader, Horse and His Boy, The Last Battle, The Magician's Nephew. I'm missing one in there. Maybe it's 6. 6.
I think somebody in the chat said 6. Yeah.
And The Magician's Nephew is actually the chronological beginning of the story.
Mm.
So technically you would read it and then go in the order of release, with Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe being the second book.
Okay. Then someone says 7 in total.
Oh, there are 7. So
I was trying to think of them. I've got them over on the bookshelf, but they're not visible to me at the moment.
So I'll read them out.
The Silver Chair, that's the one I was missing.
Silver Chair.
So there are 7. I was right the first time.
Yeah, I guess kind of getting to what Keto and Crime was talking about with the ship. I mean, there is a lot to be said there, because the church has been understood historically as like the bark of Peter. That it's again the body of Christ, of course, but there's also been this imagery of a boat too with the bark of Peter. So I could see that being a possible connection.
Wow.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and reread those a lot closer. I've read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, obviously, tons of times. Most people don't read the whole series multiple times. I mean, I have, but it's been so long. I mean, the first time I was introduced to The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, they actually read it to us in first grade. We did read along. The teacher would read it, and learning how to read and everything, we read along, and then we watched the cartoon. So that was my first exposure to the cartoon as well. Which
Do you recommend all the books? I'm always looking for good things to listen to.
oh yeah, the whole series is good, and it's all an allegory. So the
Okay.
magician's nephew is the creation story.
Mm.
The last battle is Revelations, and then there's stuff in between. The characters from this book, some of them go on to a little bit later in the series, I think up to Voyage of the Dawn Treader, which is the third book. Then some of them reappear in the last book. I mean, it's all interconnected, although it's not like a continuation. We go directly from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe into some other story. Some of the stories take place in that time period that we're getting to in this story, where they were ruling as the kings and queens of Narnia. So yeah, they're all great.
I want to read them now. I've only read the first one, and it was when I was a kid. So this is making me excited.
Get
to
the
check
Michael
them out
York
too.
version. I'm 40 minutes or so into it, but it's great.
Which version are you listening to, Odin?
So it's the Michael York version. He's
Okay.
the narrator of it. So it's on
So
Audible.
that's the guy from Austin Powers.
Exactly. He's got a great voice though. So
So
has a little exposition.
one of my favorite quotes from the book is it goes back to Aslan being portrayed as a lion and being, he's not tame, but he is good, and that sort of duality of God. And it's a this line where he's talking to Lucy and he says, "You have listened to fears, child. Come, let me breathe on you. Forget them. Are you brave again?" And it's just that breath of God, like washing away things that aren't important, that we get caught up in, and the trials or the emotions that we go through as humans. I love that quote. And if you wouldn't mind, I would like to show you a piece of art of my friend's. She's not here tonight, but can I show you guys this?
Sure.
Yeah.
My friend Julia Mann, some of you guys may have met her.
Nice.
She does colored pencil work, and she's at all the cons. So she's actually, whenever I've been to one of the F&T meetups when there's a con, she always has a booth. And she does a lot of pop culture stuff like Star Wars and stuff, but she does so much Aslan. She loves Aslan. And this is my favorite one of hers. So I don't get paid by mentioning her or anything. I just love her art. She's one of my good friends, local, and that's her Instagram there. But she has a bunch of Aslan with the kids and stuff too. Like there's not just the one. I just like this one because it's such a realistic
I like it.
lion. Yeah. So thanks for letting me show that. But I always think of that quote with that picture of him.
Well, and something else too, I just thought of that we've yet to mention is, I mean, you kind of see that, well, multiple times with Lucy the first time at the very end of the movie, is how in Narnia, like the concept of time is played with. How, by the end of the movie, they've lived almost like into an adult life. And then when they come out, it's right as when they went in.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They just pick up where they left off.
Yes, and just kind of the concept of eternity for us, is obviously being played there with, one day is but a 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is but a day.
Yeah, the establishment of the kingdom, right, of God's kingdom with Aslan, and also I think that the imagery of the movement from winter into like spring, summer is also significant, because liturgically we think about Advent. Right. We think about Advent, we think about Christmas, right? All the darkness in the world, and it's that light, right, of Christ being born. But what does it ultimately lead to? To the spring, where there's the crucifixion, the death, but then there's the resurrection. So I think that there's also some, a lot of symbolism we can find of the death of winter and the rebirth and new life of spring.
Yeah.
Yes. No, I think definitely.
And a few people in all three of the chats, I think, have brought up the connection between Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. From what I understand, even though they were great friends, Tolkien hated the Chronicles of Narnia stuff, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, because
probably too
C.S.
kiddie.
Lewis spent so little time developing the world that there are things that kind of don't make sense. Like the trees are all alive, right? but the beavers obviously, chewing down the trees. To build the dam. They eat the fish, but the fish are, just as sentient as the rest of the animals, that kind of stuff. And the whole thing about them being kids, then living 40, 50 years, then coming back, are they adults trapped in children's bodies at that point? I mean,
That's a good point.
there's a whole bunch that just kind of world building. I think Tolkien had a problem with it because of the way he was so meticulous about world building.
Mm-hmm.
But they were very good friends.
Wait, he was meticulous? You're acting
A
like as
little
if he
bit.
wrote his own language or something.
Well, right up until Amazon got a hold of it, he was pretty meticulous with it.
Man, at some point we'll have to do the Lord of the Rings movies.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yes.
There's a lot to do there too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey,
Let's
can
do
we
it.
just take the time to realize that there were on planet Earth, there were some students that had Professor Lewis and Professor Tolkien like in maybe the same semester? Like, is that not insane?
Also, that they were best friends. Like, imagine
Yeah.
you want to be a bug on the wall to hear their conversation. Like, just imagine like just the elevated level of conversation that those two minds could have about
Oh,
anything.
I
Yeah,
know.
Silvar in my chat is saying he disliked direct allegory. So he said the series was good. He just didn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Little correction. But yeah, we can definitely do Tolkien.
Amanda Pizzolato says, "Oh yeah, LOL. Lewis literally threw in the lamppost and Father Christmas because Tolkien said not to."
But the lamppost at least comes back later in the series as a major thing.
Okay.
It comes back in at the end of this one anyway.
Yes,
Yes,
it does.
also.
They see the lamppost. Yeah.
John Thomas for $2. Have any of you seen the 70s animated version? Thank you,
These two
John.
have-
Unfortunately,
Watched it this
yeah.
morning again.
I can't do this.
Brahma watched it, and
I watched it this morning. I watched
I'm-
the Disney one last night at about 2 o'clock in the morning, and then watched the animated one while I was working today. So
Yeah, and I got about halfway through, and it got to a point where I actually had to put it on 1.25 speed, and I'm like, oh, this is actually a little more bearable now.
I'm sorry I didn't see it. Brahma, thank you for watching it. I was like, I'm the only kid who did my homework.
yeah, and I didn't even suggest the animated version. Somebody else did.
Yep, and I ended up not remembering this one at all.
Oh, it was you.
Complete.
We also have, so guys, if you're watching live tonight, this is the first night that we're simulcasting, is that the word, on a couple different channels. But all of the super chats for different channels show up here in the back. I think this one's on your channel, Michelle.
Nice.
Well, thank you, your average Patriot nerd, for the super. It's not my channel, so I can't play Miles tonight. So no topless men dancing.
What happens over there?
We have fun on Monday nights.
Topless Mr. Thompson.
Miles has to rest, guys, until we don't want that.
I don't think there's been a single time where the first time has been right on Mr. Thompson's name. Mr. Tomlin, Mr.
Sorry, Michelle. I was talking over you. What's
She just said be right back, so I think she might
okay.
have to go take care of something.
Okay. I really enjoyed this. I guess we should be wrapping it. Oh, your average Patriot nerd, he's back. Thank you
legit.
so much, sir, for the super sticker, $1.99.
Yeah, he's at my chat too. And I always like to say he put the red thumbs up because for some reason a lot of the streaming service, like, they don't show you what the sticker actually is. But anyway, thanks for
Yeah,
the
that's what he
red thumbs up.
used on Force of Light's channel,
Yeah.
as well as the red thumbs up.
Well, I've really enjoyed hanging out with you guys. I've enjoyed hanging out with the chat. This panel just makes me so happy. Brahmable, thank you for suggesting it, and thank you, Odin.
Well,
and
thank you for all the work you do.
Michelle.
You actually put
Yeah.
it together. So
thank you, and you're welcome. But no, it just makes me happy. I don't know. I feel excited about it. So We want to keep doing these, you guys. We have decided we're going to do the Screw Tape Letters. So if you haven't read it, go out and read it if you don't want to be spoiled. It's not a very long read, I promise. It's super interesting, and you can also get there's a couple different versions, I think, of the audiobook, but John Cleese does a great one. So any final parting words? Here's some of the links to everyone's channels.
If you're only familiar with The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, go read the rest of the series. They're very small books. I mean, it's not a very long read. They're definitely worth checking out. And then maybe at some point in a few months, we can all come back together and go over all the allegory through the whole story, full spoilers for all the books. Because, like I said, they're pretty easy to knock out. They are young adult and children's books technically, but they're very good for adults too. They're still a good read.
I would love to do that. Michelle, any parting words from you?
Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I really have grown to look forward to these panels quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited to keep going with them. I enjoy chatting it up with you all about obviously such a passionate subject for me and for you guys as well. But yeah, no, I love Lewis. The older I get, the more and more I love C.S. Lewis. Just such a wise man. But then, I mean, good gosh, had such an imagination. Like, I just can't even imagine being able to write something like the Chronicles of Narnia. But I'm out of breath, by the way, because I ran upstairs.
I'll give you a breather. It's
Clearly,
also
I'm out of
amazing.
shape.
It's also amazing to think that C.S. Lewis set out to invalidate Christianity
Yeah.
and ended up being converted by it.
Mhm.
Yes, yes. And Narnia makes me think of a quote that I often retweet on Twitter that Lewis said, that one day you'll be old enough to believe in fairy tales again.
Oh, I love that.
I
never
think it's
heard that
actually in
one.
the beginning of the book, I think, because in the audiobook I was listening and they give you that little introduction into the book itself. And I think because he's like, I was writing this, I forget who he was writing it to. He was like, I'm writing this for you to enjoy, but it took me a lot longer than I thought it would. And so now you're a little too old for fairy tales, but I hope that one day you'll.
It was his 4-year-old daughter, I believe. It was either daughter or niece. 4 years old is when he started writing the book. He didn't have it come out until she was 14. And you know how 14-year-olds are. They're not going to appreciate that. So that's kind of what he was hinting at that is once you've grown out of your rebellious phase, maybe you'll look back on this and enjoy it.
I love that. I love that quote. Well, thank you guys for hanging out with us tonight. Thank you to all the panelists and to the chat. Wherever you're watching this, please hit like if you like the video, leave a comment. If you don't like it, leave a comment because that helps the algorithm anyway. And we're interested in what you don't like about it.
and also suggestions on what you'd like to see us get into, because we're just kind of coming up with them as we go. So, and it doesn't always have to be about movies or books. It can be, but it doesn't have to be.
We did one about what is healthy masculinity. How do you define masculinity? One more super chat here from your average patriot nerd for $5. Thank you, sir. Says a good movie about C.S. Lewis is Through the Shadowlands with Anthony Hopkins. Have you guys seen that?
I've seen that one. And I mean, anything with Anthony Hopkins is just fantastic.
Go ahead, Michelle.
So is it more about like his life?
Yeah, it's more about him as like a professor at university. I only saw it one time, but yeah, it was pretty good. It was actually sorry, now I had to pull the image up. So it's about his time there, but it's also specifically about like his love story. So him meeting like the woman that he loves. So Joy Gresham.
Got you. Have either or any of you guys seen? I think it was on Instagram. There's some movie coming out, and I don't know who's putting it out. I don't know if it's a wide release. I don't know the situation here, but it's like a young C.S. Lewis meeting an older Freud. Has anyone seen that advertised?
No.
And it's like I didn't. What? I don't even know the like
I feel like there was
ages on them.
maybe a play. I feel like there was a play at one point on Broadway or off Broadway that was like C.S. Lewis meets Freud or something like that. So I'm wondering if it's maybe an adaptation of that.
Okay, that may be it. Yeah, I saw. I knew the actor that was playing him. I forget his name, but yeah. I saw that like a trailer for that, and it just kind of was like, oh, well, this is kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's interesting. I think it's called, well, I found something about it called The Question of God, Why Freud and Lewis. I don't know if that's what you're talking about.
Yes, no, I think that's actually it. Does it say when it's coming out?
This is an article, so
Got you. Okay.
can't really make it out right now, but I will read that. Well, okay, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you guys. As we said, leave comments in the chat, suggestions. Let us know what you like, what you don't like. We always want non-believers to feel welcome here as well. And have a great night.
Yeah.
Bye.
Have a good night, everybody. God bless.
See ya.